Well, now for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning, let's bring in a RISE analyst, Dr. Constance Ikoku. Good morning, Dr. Constance.
Hey, good morning, Adesua. How are you today?
Fantastic. Lovely to see you bright in pink this beautiful morning.
Okay, I like that word, fantastic. Looks like you had a very good weekend then.
So what's the favorite today?
Good morning. Good morning, Bimbai and Gwenga. Everybody is favorite.
Gwenga, you can be the favorite today.
That'll be glad. That'll be great.
The roses.
I know he was actually.
And that's how Dr. Constance just materialized in Abuja, just like that.
I know.
Gwenga was good having you in Lagos.
Gwenga was actually.
So we've taken her back.
Yeah. Gwenga was actually saying that today there's no Vimbai sitting beside me, so he's the one. Okay. Hello, good to see everyone. Hello there and welcome to the program. We begin with This Day newspaper. In This Day this morning, we're seeing a replay of the accusations of monopolistic tendencies against chairman of the Dangote Group, Mr. Aliko Dangote, as petroleum workers plan a showdown with his company. Here, FG calls for truce as NUPENG vows to embark on strike today over dispute with Dangote. What is the bone of contention? Let's see more on the Punch newspaper, if we can put that up. The Punch leads with NUPENG versus Dangote. Union insists on strike, meets FG, others today. The Nigerian Union of Petroleum and Gas Workers has over the weekend directed its members not to load products as Dangote refinery. This conflict is about union. An alternative labor union called Direct Tracking Company Drivers Association was set up ostensibly to counter and weaken the older NUPENG. All this in the interest of the Dangote Group. NUPENG is not having it at all. And Gwenga, how do you see this unfolding, particularly with regard to how it's going to potentially affect the market and consumers as well?
A very complicated situation, I must say, and if allowed to fester too long, could degenerate into a very troubling economic crisis. We have a situation where two parties are championing a different agenda, and very equally important agenda. They have their interest locked up. And we could see Dangote that has invested over $20 billion in his plants, refineries, one of the biggest in Africa. We know the Dangote style, and every economist wants to maximize profits, to monopolize the value chain, the supply chain, and the distribution chain in the industry. That's not going well with the Nigerian Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, who feel that he is hijacking the process and it's not giving room for free market economy. And also, the Dangote has been alleged in connivance with his cousin, Sayu Aliu Dantata, for creating a separate union and forcing them into a non-disclosure clause. Well, the laws are clear on this internationally, locally, and also the convention. When you look at the Petroleum Industry Act, which tries to deregulate the sector by creating a free flow market economy. According to the Section 32 of the PIA Act, it clearly empowers the Nigerian midstream and downstream petroleum authority. It empowers it to ensure the competition and private sector engagement in the sector, and also to investigate any dominant position that may restrict business flow in the sector. So when you look at this, the laws are clear. And also Nigeria, let's not forget that Nigeria is signatory to the Geneva Convention, Convention number 87 of 1948, that clearly protects, guarantees the right for association and also protects the need to organize such. So So also our law also recognizes that any law that has been ratified becomes a constitutional provision. And when we look at the Labour Act 2 of Section 9, subsection 6, it ensures that workers are free to either join or not to join any union, and it protects them from not being penalized. So when you look at all these laws, the laws are clear. So now the NUPENG has announced strike because Dangote, and in connivance with his brother, let's not also forget that Dangote has a genuine interest too. A lot of money has been sunk into this. Banks have borrowed a lot of money. So the banks must survive. Dangote must survive. The investors too in the sector must also survive. So this is a very delicate situation that the government and all the stakeholders need to quickly intervene into to achieve truce for the smooth sail of the economy.
All right, we know that the federal government has already intervened, and they're going to have talks to make sure that this strike does not occur. A lot of conflicting interests, as you say. Dangote has invested money, so he's trying to make sure that his business thrives. Let's stay with this newspaper. El-Rufai, there are now more poor Nigerians than our 1960 population. According to the former governor of Kaduna State, Nigeria can end poverty like China and India if this is made a priority. In 1960, Nigeria's population was 45 million. Today, it's over 200 million. So we're dealing with bigger numbers. At the same time, he's made valid points. The number is not the problem. After all, China has over 1 billion people and it has conquered poverty. India is 1.4 billion people as well, but it's still on that journey. It's not there yet. However, you can clearly see there is a plan. In contrast, in Nigeria, we have a very broken political system, which means that we're perpetuating inequality. Problems are not being solved. Instead, politicians are busy playing politics. So, Vimbai, let me bring you in here. Does the former governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, have the right to that righteous indignation, given the fact that he has been part of this political system and political parties? His party, or former party, the APC, has been in power for at least 12 years now. What's your take on this?
Yeah, it's incredible how just a couple of years outside of government and a few months in opposition suddenly brings several things into perspective for many of our politicians. But let's break things down one by one, because there were several things that were highlighted in this outing that the former governor made in Owerri. So let's begin with the concerns around the poverty statistics. I know this day tried to find the specific poverty rates for 1960, and they said that that isn't available. That particular measure of poverty started around 1980. However, we can use the per capita GDP. Now, what we know about Nigeria is that there was a massive economic boom in the 70s thanks to the oil boom. And that shot up our GDP per capita, meaning that Nigerians broken down into households from the 70s became wealthier as a whole. However, that also marks the period where gross inequality began, because when that oil boom started, it benefited the elites, it was captured in the elites, and it never trickled down. And then remember, when the oil shocks then happened in the 80s, what then happened is we introduced the SAP program, which further created more inequality. So there's sort of a curve that has happened there with regards to our poverty. Now, to now pit it against, let's say, a China or an India, I think one now needs to look at how consistent those countries have been in terms of rolling out their economic development plans, despite all other things that were happening. China, again, is a tricky example because it's important to compare apples with oranges. China is not a democracy. China is, by all terms and purposes, a socialist, a communist country. So it's important to look at all of those things. He also considered the voter turnout. He also said, well, because he discussed electoral reform at length, and he spoke about how in 2003 we hit over 60% in voter turnout, and that has, by 2023, that had come down to 30%. And we ask ourselves, well, what do we expect? 1999 had about 54% voter turnout, which shot up to 60% in 2003 because people thought that there would be hope restored in the system. And then there was the violence, there was the ballot snatching, it was done before every single Nigerian. So do we really expect people to continue to participate in a system that they've lost faith in? So I think it's in good order that he's speaking on electoral reform, especially because the conversation lately has been that we're not putting INEC under enough pressure in the lead up to 2027 to make the necessary reforms. He spoke about electronic voting and how there's still enough time for us to get it right and for us to correct those things that went wrong in 2023. So I think he's well in order to speak on that. He also spoke on federalism. Now, federalism is a sticky point because it seems that when it's campaign seasons, politicians love to celebrate and indulge in the idea and the ideology of federalism during the campaigns. But once it comes to governance, the idea of a unitary, centralized force of power is a lot more practical and a lot more, shall I say, a lot more enticing to them. But just as I conclude, Dr. Constance, I know you're rounding me up, but just as I conclude, all of this took place in the Catholic diocese in Owerri. And I think that I would like to urge the church to resist this urge to platform politicians. It's not just El-Rufai. We've seen various other politicians use the pulpit actively to campaign. And I think on this, as a member of the church myself, I feel that the body of Christ shouldn't be desecrated by politics. Yes, we advocate for good governance. That's very important. It's important as religious institutions to do so. But this thing where, as campaign season comes, we start seeing politicians going from pulpit to pulpit, I think we need to cease and desist on that one.
Vimbai, to your point on China, China is a market economy today. It wasn't before. And so Nigeria is also trying to be a market economy. We're pseudo-capitalist. And so the only difference, like you said, is, China is not a democratic government. Nigeria is a democratic government. So in a democratic system, you would imagine that you have a faster system of growth. But Nigeria hasn't progressed. So the question then arises, is your political system giving you, offering what it's supposed to offer? So when you go to China, for instance, it is not everybody cannot just run for election. So there is an elitist system, a system where before you are selected into the Communist Party of China and the ones that lead, you are educated, you have a track record, you have credibility. It's not just for everybody. Compare that to Nigeria. Let's not compare, but we're just saying, in Nigeria, where it's a democratic system, every Tom, Dick, and Harry, jumps into the fray, whether you're qualified or not, whether you have a track record, whether you have credibility or not. So what does that do for us? What has democracy done for us as a country? So I think that's what we should be thinking about. Rethink our political system, which is so broken that it's taking us nowhere, as we can see so far. All right, let's see another paper.
Dr. Constance, just very quickly, I think it's also important to say, have we deepened our democracy enough for it to be able to work for us? Is, I think, an instrumental part of that conversation.
Is it deepening? That's why I heard you trying to say something.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. You can move to the next thing.
Okay. I mean, there's no time to exhaust that conversation, but, let's start with this, the third story. Says here, NULGE, AGF plotting to preempt Supreme Court, set to pay Oshu LG funds to APC chairs, councillors sacked by court. Let's go to Vanguard, which has the same story. LG funds, Oshu NULGE wants OAGF, CBN over plan to preempt Supreme Court. The Nigerian Union of Local Government Employees is accusing the Accountant General of the Federation of plotting to preempt the Supreme Court by paying withheld local government allocations in Osun into accounts of court-sacked All Progressives Congress chairman and councillors. Wenga, let me bring you in here because it seems like you are the Osun expert for us. What more can you tell us very quickly? This one, please, I will come back to you, but he seems to be the Osun expert.
A very dangerous precedent, I must say.
Yes.
It will be a serious crime to see the Accountant General of the Federation paid into private accounts that belongs to politicians. But this is still within the realm of allegation because the PDP Osun needs to be very careful because they need to be sure that they have their facts, because they said that as at Friday last night, they have information pertaining to the Accountant General trying to raise the necessary document for the payments for the APC leaders in Osun State. And I wonder that that's an information leakage. And I know that in the civil service, there is a confidentiality clause and oath of secrecy. So civil servants are meant to conceal information and to ensure that oath of secrecy. But in a situation where the Nolji is making a strong allegation, he who must allege must show proof. But again, these are also very dangerous signs in case they have a proof. The democratic process, the rule of law and the judicial process of looking at it, because the case is at the Supreme Court now, and it must not be left to the realm of fait accompli. It must be a process of thorough investigation. So it's a world is like worlds apart now, a conflicting one for that matter. An 8-month salary for the local government across the state is a lot for the states to survive. So we watch and we see what it means, because already there have been conflicting court judgments at the level of the appeal courts. But now we are all waiting for the Supreme Court judgment. And I want to believe that the Accountant General knows the law and he knows the implication of paying money into private accounts. You recall that the last Accountant General and the former Humanitarian Affairs Minister Betta Edu had a similar case where there were allegations of payments of funds into private accounts. That is a clear breach of the law and a criminal offense. Okay,
it's an unfolding news item, so I'm sure that we will be seeing more over the next couple of days. Daily Sun this morning, 2027, Jonathan presses on with election plans, ignores wife's disapproval, directs foot soldiers in PDP to clean house. Supporters hold secret meetings outside Nigeria. This report claims multiple sources from the former president's inner circle say Jonathan not dissuaded by his wife's disapproval. His supporters have also met to devise a plan against what they call the Nyesom Wike problem, and they're not taking it lightly. The former president also wants his support base, led by Bauchi Governor Bala Mohammed, to ensure those who could impede his emergence as candidate are taken care of. A couple of things here. Jonathan was largely seen as a weak president when he was the president of Nigeria. So what has changed, or what will change if he wins? Then security, secondly, raises the subject of political recycling of leaders. We do that often. We've had former president become president again, and so we're stopping the regeneration of politicians, or stopping generational movement. Then thirdly, why he peacefully handed power over, there is that mistrust during his government that it was marred by widespread corruption. So I don't know what's going to be different. Adesua, how would you assess a political Jonathan run?
Well, I'll be very interested in seeing what the years in purgatory has done for Goodluck Jonathan, because I think he's coming with different energy than we saw him run in the race that he lost in 2015. Very interesting, because Dr. Kosa, remember, I think it was last year, we had a conversation on this same show, and you were like, wouldn't I agree that Atiku is the problem with PDP? And I was like, no, PDP is fighting principalities and powers. And Atiku has since left to the ADC, and we can still see the PDP fighting their principalities and powers there. As you called it, the Wike problem, as Sheyi Makinde of Oyo State called it before. He said they were fighting some elements within the party. Bala Mohammed obviously coming out last week to say that they were not afraid of Wike and his camp. However, Goodluck Jonathan faces an uphill battle. Presidential elections have to be one of the most expensive things you can decide to do after essentially relaxing and being retired for a couple of years. I think it's very interesting that, of course, he's coming out. He hasn't come out directly to say anything, but it seems he's being very active with his allies, and also the response from the APC government, it seems that they might actually be afraid of a Goodluck Jonathan presidency. However, I think a lot of times people are nostalgic for the good old times of Jonathan simply because certain factors are better. Our naira was stronger. We had a lower inflation numbers. However, part of why we are facing the issues we are facing today is because of the failure of the Goodluck Jonathan presidency. All the presidents who came before us have led us to where we are today. So I do think that sometimes when people take some things with good, they should take some things with bad. For instance, our electricity issue in Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan did not do very much to solve that issue. We have private companies now generating more power off-grid, whether captive solutions or off-grid solutions, generating more power than our actual national grid, about 6,500 megawatts. In a country where we're now hearing that the grid keeps collapsing and that now the distribution companies are having significant financial issues. Because why? Because major companies are leaving to start their own private solutions. So if you provide your own light, your own water,
we're going into our next story
healthcare,
already.
Oh, sorry. You can take the story.
Yeah. Let's just take it. So the Guardian newspaper, if we can pull that up, National Grid faces 5.6 trillion naira revenue loss on premium customers as they exit. High net worth customers, both individual and corporate, are dumping the power holding company of Nigeria for alternative sources due to erratic services. Total revenue collected by electricity distribution companies has also slumped due to the inability to recover the full value of electricity they supply. There's the issue of low collection efficiency compounded by estimated billing that customers often dispute as inaccurate. Illegal connections and bypassing of meters further poses a challenge. I mean, a lot in the story, that over the years remain unresolved. All this stifles industrial growth and discourages investments and raises production costs. And overall, it also undermines competitiveness. How are we going to reach that $1 trillion economy target when we can't even get the basics off the ground? And that's why, do you want to round off your thought? And then maybe Vimba, you can jump in on this.
Yes, I will. It's been reported that at least 250 companies have left PHCN and are providing their own electricity. Dangote Group alone provides 1,500 megawatts. 6,500 for private companies, and I think Nigeria produces around 4,000 on a good or bad day. Now, what we are seeing here is that the system cannot survive without these big companies, without the academic institutions, the telecommunications companies, and these big corporations and manufacturing companies like Golden Penny also, who are now providing their own electricity. Without their money going to the system, without this, we tried a ban A, ban B tariff system where those who make the most, who can afford the most, should help subsidize electricity for the poorest Nigerians. However, the richest Nigerians are now providing their own electricity and leaving the grid altogether. What you have in that type of system is actual systemic collapse and failure. Because first of all, we have poor maintenance of our system, our power structure system. We have huge debt in the system. And then we also have vandalism with the transmission lines. And now you're saying that we cannot sustain. I think the 29% of revenue collected of what was actually expected, this can't go on.
All right.
And for me, this ties into the stories that we're seeing across the country when we think about equity in investment. Because the gap in Nigeria is widening. The 3 richest men in Nigeria, I believe, are richer than the lowest 100 combined.
Okay.
Right, and if people continue to be their own government, essentially, provide the government services, if that is what continues to happen, then apart from a lack of accountability, I don't think we're going anywhere anytime soon.
All right. So in the interest of time,
here, Dr. Constance, just a few thoughts.
Yeah, very quickly.
That's around Electricity Act 2023, which we all thought was going to be, what do they call it? The bullet. What do they call it? The shining bullet. There's an expression around, you know, the solution
magic
to all
wand,
of our problems.
the magic wand.
And as we continue to see it roll out, and we continue to see it being tested, we now realize that this is not really the solution to all the problems that we expected, because now we have a situation where we've gone into the band system. The band system has now caused more issues than it has solved solutions. In essence, they're saying that, oh, well, you know, the tariffs need to meet market rates. There needs to be, you know, it has to be reflective. The costs have to be reflective. But in essence, how many people can afford that? Is it sustainable for business? So I believe the National Assembly have also decided, in also ironing out some of the kinks in the Electricity Act, have also decided that they're going to need to re-look at this band system and ensure that it's enshrined in the Act itself when they reconvene. However, it only makes sense that people are going to go off the grid or find their own personal solutions, power solutions, because they can't exist without. You now look at the state level, where states are trying to move towards their own independent power generation. What's happening there? They're now fighting with the discos, because the discos are arguing and saying, oh, the states have no right to regulate and so forth. So the more we move forward, the less development we see, and the more we continue to see the expose of the corruption and, you know, sort of the opacity of our electricity sector.
All right, let's see Leadership newspaper. We're going to have to move very quickly on this. Foreign agents now hire Nigerians for global disinformation campaigns. These disinformation campaigns are happening in the midst of a growing digital infrastructure and a vast youth population that are digitally connected. There are groups operating in Nigeria, for example, a pro-Russian YouTube network publishing content on Russia, Ukraine, the US, EU, Israel. Nigeria's growing digital sophistication and low entry barriers has made it a fertile ground for such operations to take root and scale. No surprises here at all. What we see, not only pro-Russian content, for decades, the developed world have fought for the hearts and minds of Africans at the African continent, consistently pushing narratives that advance their agendas, whether through overt or covert operations. So, I mean, the implication is that these operations can destabilize countries, they can fuel unrest, they can cause ethnic tensions, you know, a lot. They can cause religious tensions. But, I mean, it also speaks to the weakness of our government, right? Our systems in Africa. Ultimately, we're vulnerable. Let's see.
Yes.
Yeah, Adeswa, did you want to say something quickly?
Oh yes, I definitely agree with you in that this highlights some of our vulnerabilities, especially as I keep saying, as we move into this multipolar new world order. I know a lot of people love to look at it as either pro-Russia or pro-West, but I think what we have now, right now, with a lot of influences within the country, but also particularly within the region, we always have to pull it back to the Wagner Group if it comes to Russia and the information or disinformation channels that they built here, particularly when they were entering the security network in West Africa, in the Sahel province. But also, you also do have sometimes pro-West messaging. For me, where it becomes a problem is when Africans are being exploited for the benefit of another man's country or another man's bottom line. And we can see that any country would take advantage of Africans. And, you know, I saw someone say that if we are not careful, we will create a permanent underclass for the whole world if our leaders are not very careful in taking care of our minds, our hearts, and our economic future.
Very beautifully said. Indoctrination is indoctrination, whether it comes from the West or from Russia or from wherever. There is a lot of indoctrination going on, and it's just a stronger case for platforms like Arise, African authentic voices that can tell the African story in a true, unbiased, fair and balanced way.
It's been happening for centuries. Let's see New Telegraph 2027 lone opposition party going against APC may fail, says the Labour Party, trying to talk to other opposition parties to come together. We also have Abuja Inquirer this morning. Tinubu's supporters may cause unrest. DSS alerts us. And going to, let's see, the Daily Trust. Schools resume amid biting economy. And finally, Daily Independent, we have Starlink nationwide expansion drive threatens ICPS survival, CBN hawkish monetary policy fights inflation, boosts investor confidence. Okay, to the international headlines. The Citizen newspaper this morning, residents hit back. Joburg residents are reacting to the billing system as the government desperately tries to increase revenue, and Donald Trump not at G20, no problem. So the U.S. is no longer a leading democracy and has become an irritation to its own citizens as well as a threat to the world, says this report. Benga, this is a general sentiment across the world, isn't it? The U.S. is changing with Donald Trump at the helm.
Well, we can see the U.S. that we all know as one of the most liberal democracy in the world is really turning, and we look at the sentiment that prevailed when he was campaigning for his return to power, and that is the battle for the soul of America. The undercurrent is what underscores who owns America. So we shouldn't be surprised that President Donald Trump is coming with that kind of rambunctious tendency to make America an exclusive entity. So that is what is playing out now. A lot of people have gained that free access, enjoying the goodies of America as a liberal democracy. But right now, it's being threatened by the issues of migrants. That you could see that during the debates, during the campaign, those are the issues: the economy of U.S., the ownership of U.S., and the migrant issue of U.S. Those were the things that dominated the campaign. So when issues like this is played, and he won with a convincing victory, an emphatic victory. So that tells you the underlying sentiment of an average American citizen. So we need to go into what the American reality really is as against the balance of power and the global sentiment that is trailing what is being discussed.
Is it a migrant issue though? I mean, there is clear ideological difference between the Democrats and the conservatives we know. Okay. Adesua?
Yeah, you know, in America, I would say that American history, when you have a push to the left, you usually then have a pull to the right, right? It basically swings and balances. But what we're seeing coming out of this new Trump regime, from his appointees, but also from his messaging in his first term, is that he's very consistent. He's America first. But what he sees as America oftentimes means white America. And being white America first, you know, we're seeing a militarization of American streets in a way that they are not used to. But for me, it's a revelation of what America truly is, rather than it being a new thing. Trump is not a new thing in American politics. He's really just highlighting the problem. For example, this idea now that it is now the Secretary of War and the Department of War. We know America has caused wars, started wars all over the world. We know that America has entered into independent nations and stirred up problems within those nations for regime change. Even just for a banana company, they've done it before in South America. So they were not doing defense, they were doing war. So maybe they're now being truthful about what they were doing in the past. Trump is not new to America, but what is new is that Americans are suffering in this new way. I think they are not used to
it's about defending the American interests.
No, so the thing is, the culture wars have always been there, but they're just bubbling to the surface now. And now it's cool to speak anyhow, you know, whether you're racist, whether you're homophobic, it doesn't matter. Now people are able to express those views, although it's also causing damage to the American brand. Well, let's quickly move to the Times newspaper. Trump plans sanctions on Russia as Kyiv battered by strikes. Russia launched over 800 missiles and drones across Ukraine yesterday to continue the war. And I mean, it's apparent that Trump's effort to try to end this war hasn't worked out the way he planned it. So let's move on to Financial Times. Tokyo turmoil. Premier quits to avert splits, more political uncertainty in that part of the world. In Japan, as the Prime Minister, who is Shigeru Ishiba, decides to quit. Japan is the fourth largest economy in the world, and the party has been suffering election losses, and it has lost its majority. So, excuse me, Shigeru thinks that he can no longer hold the helm at the top there. Then finally, the Guardian newspaper, "Stop making mistakes," Starmer warned by senior London Labour figures. Labour members are forming new centre-left group in order to change the direction of the party. The point here is that if they don't reform, the Reform UK is on their heels. They're taking over. We saw the last elections across the country. The Reform UK did very well, almost blowing Labour out of the water. Any final comments from anyone quickly here before we call it a wrap?
I think very quickly before we go, Shigeru Ishiba, Japan, you know, we unfortunately got sucked into the drama that has been unfolding in Japan over the past few months. You know, what happened with Nigeria, Tanzania, Mozambique, and there was a fourth African country, unfortunately was more asymptomatic of the problems in Japan around, you know, trying to create equity, which is what gives rise to this far right. You know, we were speaking about America first, and the Japanese Senseido Party is saying Japan first, and they don't want immigrants. And this sentiment is rising all around the world. But, you know, it was only a matter of time, I think, until he yielded the floor and resigned, because after he lost the last election, you know, he was buying time. And then after the deal that he did with Trump, which many felt was that he capitulated and he sold Japanese interests short, this was inevitable. So let's see what happens next, but a concerning rise really in far-right popularity in Japan.
All right, you're the one that is worried. People that are in those countries, where we talk about the rise of far-right across Europe, they are saying we're fighting for our countries or our continent. All right, we'll have to leave it there. That's all we can take on the paper review today.
All right, Dr. Constance Ikoku, thank you so much for this. And of course, we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.